Hey everybody, it's Brian, and welcome to the 64th Qt tutorial with C++ and GUI programming. Today we're going to be actually downloading some stuff off the web using Qt. We're going to cover the QHttp class. So just go into the help system, type QHttp, and just browse over this class real quick. If you're wondering what HTTP stands for, it's Hypertext Transfer Protocol. That's how files are moved around the web. For example, if you go to a web page, here's my website, you notice the HTTP in front of this. It means we're using the Hypertext Transfer Protocol. Part of this protocol is you make a request using GET, and when I say using GET, you're actually sending a packet saying, get this file. The web server will turn around, see if the file exists. If it does, it sends back the file. In this case, looking at this, it sent back the web page. So you can see there's the contents of the web page that we downloaded, and it downloads all the images and stuff too. And if it doesn't exist, it sends back an error code, like we'll just say index.html. And you see how it says the dreaded 404 not found. Well, 404 is a status code. That's an HTTP status code. So what we're going to actually do today is we're going to make a program to download files. So we're going to say new, and we're just going to say project console application. I'm going to call it do HTTP and etest. Next, finish. And we've got our real basic application here. Now the first thing you want to do is actually add a reference into the network module. Whoops, help if I could spell network. And once you've added a reference to the network module, it'll rescan your project, and then life goes on. You can do what you need to do. So we will add a new class, and we'll just call this downloader. My computer's been acting, sorry, you want to inherit QObject while I'm thinking about it. My computer's been acting a little funky here. I installed Windows 7 SP1, and I've been having all sorts of weird issues. Like it blue screened on me 20 minutes ago, and it hasn't done that in about 10 years, so kind of concerned that maybe Microsoft didn't get their stuff right this time. Alright, now we want to include QHttp. We also want to include QFile, and let's of course include QDebug. Help if I got the pound sign in there instead of the 3. Now that we've got those in there, we need to make a function that we're going to actually kick this whole process off. So we'll say void do download. And of course we need the object we're actually going to work with here. So we'll say QHttp, and we'll just call it HTTP. That way we know what it is. And part of working with the QHttp class is it will, while it's downloading, fire off some signals here. Here's the signals we got to work with. There's a whole bunch of them, and I'm not going to get into all of them, but the ones we're really focused on are state changed, response header received, and request finished. And what these are is the state changed. Let's just click on that. There's different states of the connection. Unconnected, host looked up, connecting, sending, receiving. If you watch the network primer that I did last night, you'll really understand what I'm talking about. This uses a TCP connection, so it's got that underlying three-way handshake. And the state change signal tells you where in that handshake you are and what the class is actually doing under the hood. The response header received is part of the HTTP protocol. When you request a file, it sends you the file, but in front of it, it sends a header that has metadata about the file and the transaction that you're making. So the first packet always has this header, so that's when you get the header. And request finished is when the actual request is finished and you have all of the file. I'm not 100% certain, but I'm sure some of you gurus out there are going to correct me if I'm wrong. I believe the QHttp class caches it into a temp file somewhere, and then you can pull it out wherever you want. So without further ado, let's actually flip back here and implement these. So we're just going to copy that, paste it, and then we want the response header received. Just copy that. And then we want ready read. Oops, sorry, not ready read. We want request finished. You might be asking yourself, what's the difference between ready read and request finished? Well, ready read is fired whenever you have data in the buffer that can be read. Request finish is fired when the entire process is done. So if you try doing this off ready read, you may not have all of the file. You may only have a chunk of it, because remember, you have a certain window which you can send packets in. So if you have exceeded that window, and let's just think of it as a bucket. Let's say you got a 1 gallon bucket and you're trying to transfer 5 gallons of water. Well, it's going to take 5 buckets or 5 packets to get this through. Now, I don't want to scare you with the details. You don't really need to know any of that to use this class. You just need to understand the concept of how that works. Alright, so now that we've got our function prototypes here, let's go in here and actually implement these. We'll say void downloader, do download, and that is going to actually be where we're going to kick this whole process off here. And we're just going to implement these really quickly. All right. First thing we're going to want to do now that we've got them implemented is we're going to want to flesh out these slots. So that way we can see exactly what's going on here. So let's do the state change first. So we'll say switch state. And I'm just going to do this very quickly. Case 0. I say quickly and then I goof up. Okay, case 0. Break. And I'm looking at my notes, but you may have to flip back over into here and actually go state changed and state, and that way you can see which state is which value. And 0 is unconnected. And there are 7 states that we need to worry about here. State 1 is host lookup. Let's actually uppercase that just because I'm picky. State 2 is connecting. And really, you don't need to worry about the states. I'm just doing this for illustrative purposes, just so you can see, what's going on under the hood. I really want you to understand that there's a multi-part process. You don't just fire something out and the server returns data. I mean, there's a whole lot that happens in the background here. Five is connect. And 6, of course, is closing. Alright, now our response header received. Remember, this is going to be the first packet. If we're transferring a file that takes 5 buckets, this will be the first bucket. We're going to get the response header. Now remember, we don't actually have any real data yet. We're just getting the header, or the information about the data we're going to get. So say QDebug. And we want the size. So let's just grab size. And let's grab our reference to the Q response header. And we'll say content length. And through the magic of copy and paste, we're going to add a few more things here. We want the type, because we want to know whether we're grabbing, a text file or an image or anything like that, and we want to know the status code, the HTTP status code. Remember when I went to the web page and I typed in a file that didn't exist? Well, that's the status code. Just for information purposes, if it says 200, that means the whole thing's okay. It literally means 200 okay. Anything in the 400s means there's a problem with your request, and 500 means there's a problem with the server. Okay, now we've got our request finished, and notice how there's this bool error. That's how you tell if there was an error in the whole process. So what you can say is if error, then else, and we'll just do Q debug we can say error. That way we know something bad happened. Otherwise we can say Q debug okay. That way we know, the request is finished, life is good, everything goes on here. Now, this is fine and dandy, but we haven't actually told it to download anything yet. So what we need to do is actually create our object. Say HTTP equal new QHttp. We'll say this is the parent class. And now we want to connect up our signals and slots. We got state changed, and then this with slot. Whoops. We want the response header received. And finally, we will connect the HTTP signal. And what did we have here? We had the request finished. Now that we've got our signals and slots implemented, the final step of this is we need to actually request a file. So we say HTTP set host, that way you're setting the server, and you can set it to whatever you want, but I'm just going to do my server, void realms, just because I'm used to my server and I know how it behaves. And then we want to actually get a file. And we're just going to get the root of that website, or the slash. And what this will do, once we go out to the website, is it'll say, okay, get the base directory here, and if there's a default file, the web server will serve the default file. You see, there's our slash right here at the end. So what the web server does is says, okay, go to the root of the website, look for the defaults file, which in my website's case is called default. Hope if I can spell default. .aspx. So if you go to slash default aspx, it's the same thing. And you should note before we fire off this tutorial, if we go index.html, it's going to return a 404 not found. So let's save our work, and really quickly, let's call out our class here. So we'll say downloader, cdown, do download, compile and run, and with any luck we don't have any errors in our code here. And went faster than I could drag it over, but you can see how it says connecting, sending, reading, the size, that's the size of the information. The type, the MIME type is text/HTML, it means it's a text file. The status is 200, remember 200 is good. And connect means we're connected. Now you notice how it didn't disconnect. Part of the HTTP protocol is a keep alive parameter. And what that'll do is if there's no problems with your request, it'll just keep that connection open for as long as you need it. That way you can make multiple requests off the same connection. Because making a connection, making that three-way TCP handshake is actually rather expensive and slow. So they just keep the connection open so you can just keep making requests off the same connection. Now, let's show you what happens if we request a file that doesn't exist. Remember, index.html does not exist off my website. So we'll compile, run, and you see we get different results here. We get connecting, sending, reading, 4040 for the size, type text.html, status 404. Remember, that's the not found. And then notice closing unconnected, meaning the web server just said, goodbye, I'm done with you. So that's really all you need to know about these connections. Now, before I close this tutorial, I know somebody out there is going to ask me, Brian, how do you download this to a file? Well, I'm kind of glad you asked. In the request finish, we could have OK, but we can also just dump this into a file. And I've got a directory out here. There's absolutely nothing in it, and we're going to download it to that directory. So what I'm going to do is say qfile, and we'll just say file equal new. Oops, better make this a pointer. And we want to give this a name here. I'm going to throw mine in e-test downloads, but you can put it wherever you want. Remember to change your slashes to the universal slash, otherwise it'll read it as an escape character. And we'll say test.txt. And then we'll say if file.open, and we want the mode, which we're just going to say append. Then we'll delete the file, that way we don't have a memory leak. But if it's open, then we want to actually write that information to the disk. So we're going to say file, write, and we want HTTP read all. And what that'll do is that'll give us a Q-byte array. And we can take that Q-byte array and we can just throw it right into the QIO device, the Q file, and that'll write everything out to disk. And then we'll say file. We want to flush the contents of this, make sure everything gets written to disk. And file, close. There we go. Now you should also note, instead of doing this off the request finish, you can actually hand it in the get as a parameter. You can hand it a QIO device. So you could just make a Q file in memory and put a reference to the Q file pointer right here. That way, as it's getting the information, it automatically writes it off to disk for you. So you don't have to worry about the I/O. And then when the request is finished, you would just, of course, flush, close, and delete your file. But I'm trying to keep this tutorial really simple and very easy to understand. So let's save our work, compile and run. And you can see how it's 404 error, file not found, closing, unconnected. But if we go out to our download directory, you see we now have this test.txt. And if we open this up, you see there's the contents. And this is the actual information that's displayed on the web page. You can see it actually says, HTTP 404. And it says, the page cannot be found. So that's what this is right here. And you can actually prove that by going, right-click, view source, and that's what we just downloaded right there. So, anyways, I need to cut this tutorial off because I'm running out of time, and well, you know how it is with YouTube. So, thank you for watching. I hope you found this video educational and entertaining, and please, shoot me any questions you guys got. I enjoy your feedback. It really keeps me on my toes and, keeps me honest, because sometimes I say things and think I know what I'm talking about and I really don't. So just definitely keep up on that feedback.